Hi there. So great to be talking to Ms. Forsyth's class. My name is David Bowles. I am the author of My Two Border Towns.
And my name is Erika Meza, and I am the illustrator of My Two Border Towns. And we've got a fair amount of letters here with a lot of questions. So we're going to try our best to answer most of them or a lot of them. If we didn't answer yours, we're so sorry. But hopefully with these, we'll be able to answer loads.
Right. Some of them were similar enough that I think we'll be okay. So the first question is, what inspired you to write the book? And is it based off a true story? So I live on the border between southern Texas and northern Mexico, a place called the Rio Grande Valley. And I grew up in the little town of McAllen, which is right across the river from the town of Reynosa. And as a kid, I would go with my dad across the river to visit my great-grandmother, Genoveva, and cousins of my dad's that still lived on that side. And it was a lot of fun. We would hang out, we would go to different restaurants, we would buy things the family needed, things that you can't always get in the US. And it was a wonderful part of my childhood. So when I got married and had kids, I wanted to do the same thing for my children. I wanted them to be transnational, which means to have a sense of community on both sides of a border, right? And in two countries, transnational. And they really enjoyed it. And my wife and I would take them across and do a lot of the same things. And we had friends and family still living on the other side, although we were now living in the town of Dana, which is right next to the town of Weslaco. And on the other side of the river from us are the towns of Rio Bravo and Progreso. And Progreso is kind of the town that inspired a lot of the stuff in the book. And so it was a wonderful time, different from when I was a kid. A little bit tighter security, longer wait times to get across, sometimes hours. But my kids still enjoyed it and were able to still see Progreso and Weslaco, Rio Bravo and Dana as both part of the same community. But once my kids grew up and went off to college and to live their lives and do whatever things that they wanted to do, my wife and I still continued going across because we have friends and family on the other side. But what we started noticing back in about 2017 or so was these families that were starting to live on the bridge. Sometimes my wife and I would park a car on the US side. There are big parking lots where you pay $5 to park your car all day. And then we would walk across. It was good exercise. And as you get older, you need to do as much exercise as possible. And walking back, we would encounter these families and we would talk to them and find out what's going on. And we discovered that they were from countries in either the Caribbean or Central America where there was a lot of danger, where there was violence. And they were escaping the bad things in those countries and trying to come to the US. They were seeking asylum. They were refugees. But the US had put this new thing in place that blocked them from stepping on US soil. Because see, there's like a law, an international law that says that a country has to grant you asylum, or at least listen to your case and listen to your reasons for wanting asylum if you step onto their soil, right? But if they can keep you from stepping onto their soil, then you can't do it, right? It was this tricky kind of sad thing that was happening. So they were having to wait sometimes months for an appointment to be able to maybe step on US soil and maybe get asylum. And they didn't want to lose their turn, so they were just living on the bridge, which made things like really, really complicated for them. And my wife and I became friends with some of these families and brought them, medicine and water and food and just whatever kind of supplies they needed, because they were afraid of getting out of line, frankly. And when we were doing this, I kept imagining, what would it have been like for my kids when they were young to encounter this? What would have happened? Well, I know my kids, I know they have big hearts and they care about people. They would have befriended the children that were living there, and they would have encouraged us to do even more. So I wanted to write a book about that, a book that would talk about what it feels like to live on the border and to be in a transnational community where you have two towns that you live in, essentially, and how wonderful that is, and how much joy there is, but also how that joy is made complicated by the fact that there are people trapped between the two communities that can't enjoy the same freedoms, that don't have the same privileges. And then I wanted to kind of to make people wonder whether they might have a responsibility to help those, like the boy and his father feel they have a responsibility to help those people. So yeah, that is where a lot of this came from.
And it's the perfect way to actually get us into the next question, because they are asking what will happen to the people who are on the bridge and what can we do to help refugees. And the truth of the matter is, guys, we don't know what happens to the people in the bridge. Some of them may be able to make it through. Some of them may get eventually tired, because obviously afterwards COVID happened, and so all of these things became even slower, and so a lot of people have grown tired of it and just decided, you know what, let's just go somewhere else. Some people have decided to just stay in Mexico, but obviously for some of them that can still be very dangerous, because the areas in the border can be tricky if you don't know how to handle them. And some of them have decided to go back to their countries. The problem is that in their countries they're also going to have the same problems that they fled from. So a lot of the times they find themselves kind of in a difficult position where they've already spent a lot of money to get there. They've already lost everything. They no longer have a house or belongings or any sort of help to rely on. But then they, imagine you pack for a trip and you think, well, it's going to take 3 months and I've got $100. So these $100 need to last for 3 months. But then once you get to that place, they actually tell you, yeah, you're going to have to wait a little bit to be able to go through. And it's just like, cool, but how long? And they don't tell you. So that goes on for so long that it's only natural that some people would grow desperate and start trying to find alternatives, especially when you've got little kids. Yeah. So yeah, we don't know whether they're able to make it through or not. And I think that's also why the book has been left in the way that it's been left. We don't know if there's a happy ending or not at the end, but that's where we need to pressure the grown-ups to do something to help.
Right. Because I mean, the truth is the boy and his father, there's only so much they can do. They're not the ones who make the decisions about the way asylum seekers, way refugees are handled. It's the government in Washington, D.C., right, that makes those decisions. And to some extent also the state government in Austin, Texas, in the case of this book. A very similar question, or one that's connected, is, are doctors able to help people at the border? The boy and his dad brought medicine to the families, but what else can be done? Well, a lot of these families, the ones that my wife and I became friends with, are afraid of losing their place in line, but they will sometimes make deals with each other. Like a member of one family will find out what everybody needs and will gather money and will like go into town and then come back, and they'll hold the place in line for that person. There are some doctors that will come visit them and check on the children and so forth to make sure everybody's okay. But a lot of times there are just tourists or, people from the Mexican town or from the US town that are helping them out. They'll take their prescription and go get them some medicine. And as Erika said, I mean, a lot of people, their money is running out. You can imagine coming like this family that the boy Elder in the book is from, who's based on a real life boy. They were from Cuba, and you can imagine, getting from Cuba to Mexico and then coming up to the border and being there for 6 months. You've spent all your money. You don't have much left. All you can do is rely on the kindness of people in that community, people who feel that they have an obligation to help, the duty of care that the dad talks about in the book. And so, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people, doctors and other people, who are willing to help those refugees. I will tell you that in the specific case of the people who we befriended, the people on the bridge between Progreso and Nuevo Progreso in the US, they were eventually moved from that bridge to another border point about 45 miles away, where they established a camp where all these people from the different bridges could stay in one place, and were given numbers and stuff like that. But beyond that, I never heard from them. I had given them my phone number, but I've never got a phone call. So it's hard for me to tell you like what happened. They may have been sent back to Cuba. They may have made it across. And that's what, that's what I choose to believe, that somehow they made it across. Yeah.
Hopefully. Now they're also asking how were the illustrations created and whether or not I went to art school. And this is going to be an interesting one. So the illustrations were made with gouache, which is a kind of sort of watercolory paint that is water-based. There was also a lot of acrylic and a lot of pencils that are turned into watercolors when you add some water to it. So that allowed me to create all of those lovely textures that you've got in the background. And then I would just go in with some pencils to just create the small details. Whether I went to art school or not, well, I did and I didn't. Because I went to graphic design school, which I think doesn't count as art school, because we are doing everything on, a lot of the stuff would be sketched, but then straight away we would go to the computer. Whereas what I liked was to actually get my hands dirty and my clothes full of paint. So I did graphic design, and then basically what I did is I learned a lot of different techniques on YouTube and on the internet, and by basically stalking people who were already doing their stuff, and I little by little learned how to become an illustrator. And then once I had these kind of skills, then I did do a year of art school. So yeah, the answer is yes, but no, but yes.
Yes, but no, but yes. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens sometimes. Like, we study something that is adjacent to, I didn't study writing. I studied English. I studied English literature, at the university to become an English teacher. And along the way, you do a lot of writing and you study the way people write. And, eventually you just find your way into it. Like, you figure it out on your own. You don't, it's not always necessary to take a class on this is exactly how you do this thing, because sometimes discovering it for yourself based off of models around you is powerful.
Yeah, when there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely. So then we have some fun questions. What's your favorite book? Which I always think of as, what's your favorite book of all time versus what's your favorite book when you were a kid, Erika?
It's a very complicated question to reply to, as we've seen before. I'm just going to have to go with this because it's massive. And I love it so much that I carried it all the way from Mexico to here to London, where I live now. I put it in my backpack and I was just I don't care if I have to pay for extra luggage. I am taking this baby home. Because I've had it since we were very, very little. My dad brought it one day when I was 5 or 6 years old. And it's such a terribly heavy book, but it talks about the lost city of Tenochtitlan and the main temple in it, which was the El Templo Mayor, the biggest temple that we had in the Aztec capital. And it has got all of the cool details about the ruins and the culture, and it's really cool. And I'm still reading it as a grown-up, and I have never finished it, but I love looking at the pictures.
It definitely a great resource. When I was a kid, my favorite book, when I was around the age of the people who are listening to us right now, my favorite book was Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle, just because it was in a time when I didn't have any books that had Mexican American characters in it, or indigenous characters, anything at all. It was a book that at least talked about, through time travel or whatever, the arrival of Europeans and the conflict with indigenous people in the Americas and stuff like that. So it was something that meant a lot for me, and I read it a whole bunch of times when I was a kid. But now I would say that my favorite book is the Popol Vuh, which is a great native text from Guatemala, from the Quiche Maya people, with just wonderful stories about the hero twins. I mean, there's lots of different stories, but the main stories that I love are the stories about the hero twins, these two mischievous twins who defeat the lords of the underworld at their own game. And right now, it's on my mind a lot. I'm trying to write a version of it. So, yeah, that is what our favorite books are. The last question we're going to address, and we're going to admit some shameful things about ourselves, is have you seen Encanto? I had wanted to see it when it first came out. It used to be much easier to pop to the movies, but with the pandemic, you think about it. You're like, do I really want to go into a theater full of people? And so I think that both Erika and I were like, let's wait till it comes out on Disney Plus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been out on Disney Plus for a while, but in my case, it was only last Saturday, a Saturday before I'm recording this, a Saturday in March, that my daughter and her partner said, "Hey, we're gonna sit you down and you're gonna watch Encanto because it can't be that you still haven't seen it." And so I saw it a week ago, and it was really, really good. I loved it a lot. Erika, you still haven't seen it yet. But now you're going to, right?
I am going to. As soon as we finish this, I am going to clear my schedule and I'm going to watch it this weekend because it's shameful.
Yes.
And what other books have you written and illustrated? There's plenty. The last one I did in the US is called Balloons for Papa, and it was written by Elizabeth Bedia. And I have got a book that is a secret for now, but that I wrote myself and that I'm very excited about. So when you know, you'll know.
Yeah. And I have a bunch of books out, but maybe most interesting to you guys there at Cypress Ridge would be my 13th Street series, which is a chapter book series about three Mexican-American cousins who find themselves pulled into a creepy other world that is just like one long never-ending street, no exit in sight, and it's full of monsters, and they have to figure out a way in every book to defeat the particular monsters they encounter and get back to their hometown. And then in the following book, they're pulled back in again. So it's a lot of fun, great illustrations. And just if you enjoyed this book and you enjoyed the boy and the culture, whatever, there's a lot of Mexican-American culture in it, but there's also a lot of really cool, spooky monsters. It's not overly scary, but it's creepy and weird and fun. So check it out.
And it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Forsyth, for putting the questions together. You guys have a great, great rest of your school year.
Thank you, guys. Bye.